last session, we looked at the Gentile kingdoms represented in the statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dream. We left off with the influences of the Greco-Roman culture and the impact it has had on our people. What we failed to realize is that the serpent infiltrated humanity with beasts and hybrids. Daniel tried to warn us. In Daniel 7:2-3, he said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. Please understand that these beasts are abnormal. Now we will examine Greco-Roman history to see how it has been altered to present historical facts in a way that favored and glorified certain groups at the expense of others. In the context of Greek and Roman history, we can certainly see how whitewashing defined how the historical narrative has been shaped to support white supremacy. As we go on, we will see what happened after the Romans took control of the scriptures and fostered the false doctrine that the people of the Most High had been erased. And then they reinvented themselves as the chosen people, the kings and priests in the earth. Of course, they gloss over their part in that, but they had help. They had the help of Esau Edom. Esau mixed himself with the other nations, namely the Greeks and the Romans, i.e. Chittim. Let's go on. Before we go on, let's clear up a few things, because it's often said that Chittim is Greece, while others say no, it's Rome. So this comes from the Historical and Biographical Dictionary. It says Chittim or Chittim, the island of Cyprus, and in a wider sense, the islands of the Mediterranean. In regards to Greece or Grecia, it's a country on the southeast of Europe, including Ionia and Asia Minor. The Grecians and Greeks, the Yehudis call them all Gentiles. So in ancient times, the islands of the Mediterranean was referred to as Chittim. Chittim. So we see that Chittim is used with some flexibility, and it could refer to various Mediterranean islands. And we also want to keep in mind that our people called the Gentiles Greeks. So let's get into this, and we're going to start with Esau and remind ourselves that 2 Esdras 6:9 tells us that Esau is the end of the world. Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So we should not be confused about the puppet master behind the scenes. It's Esau. He's the end of the world. Before we can talk about the whitewashing of Scripture, we need to make sure we understand the connections about how Esau mixed himself with these other groups. There are some who only connect him to Europeans. He's mixed with several groups, to include Neanderthals. And that's pretty sobering, isn't it? So to identify Esau, we can't just look at Europeans. That's not to say his connection to the Europeans, especially the Romans, is not significant, because the Roman Catholic Church used religion to bring our people under bondage. But we need to look at the other connections and alliances he made through marriage. And some of those folks looked like us. Now let's dig a little deeper into the gene pool of the Edomites. We're looking at Deuteronomy 2:8-12. The backstory here is what happened when the children of Israel came out of captivity in Egypt. They had to pass through various territories to get to the promised land. So it says, when we passed beyond our brethren, the descendants of Esau, who dwell in Seir, away from the road of the plain, away from Eloth and Ezion Geber, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. Then the Most High said to me, do not harass Moab, nor contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of their land as a possession, because I have given Ar, or Ar, to the descendants of Lot as a possession. So it says the Emim had dwelt there in times past, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. They were also regarded as giants, like the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Emim. Listen, the Horites formerly dwelt in Seir, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their place, just as Israel did to the land of their possession, which the Most High gave them. So Esau moved into a territory where giants lived. Now we need to look at who he mixed with, and then we'll take another look at him. So this comes from Genesis 36, 1 through 8. Now this is the genealogy of Esau, who is Edom. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan. He also took a wife from the Hittites, another from the Hivites, and then he married one of Ishmael's daughters. Verse 6, then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the persons of his household, his cattle and all his animals, and all his goods, which he had gained in the land of Canaan, and went to a country away from the presence of his brother Jacob. For their possessions were too great for them to dwell together, and the land where they were strangers could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau dwelt in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. So Esau married women from different groups. The Ishmaelites are the original Arabs. These are descendants of Abraham. They are a dark melanated people. Don't confuse them with the Indo-Europeans who are calling themselves Arabs today. But he also mixed with the Horites, and we want to find out more about them to see who they really are. So it says Horite. They are denoted as the inhabitants of Mount Seir before its occupation by the Edomites. And notice that you can spell it with Horite or Chori. Now, who are these people? Because Esau married the daughter of the Horite chieftain, Anah. I'm going to drop down. It says, we find in the Old Testament traces of the existence of the Horites in other parts of the country besides Mount Seir. In Genesis 34:2 and Joshua 9:7, the Septuagint more correctly reads Horite instead of Hivite. It says Hor or Horite has sometimes been explained to mean cave dweller. It more probably, however, denotes the white race. They are equating the Horites with the white race. Let's pause right here because we can now see he's mixed himself with melanated and non-melanated people. Ishmaelite, Canaanite, Hittite, and Horite. So we see here Jeremiah 49 tells us, the Most High says, I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His descendants are plundered, his brethren and his neighbors, and he is no more. So the covers are being removed to expose him. Why did he have secret places? What was he trying to hide? So again, we can't just look at the European nations. Some of these folks he mixed himself with look like us. And let's also remember that there are some among these groups who will have the right heart toward the Most High and his people. So Esau mixed himself with the Horites, cave dwellers. And as you can imagine, because they lacked sufficient melanin, they had to live in caves to protect themselves from the sun. Listen to this from Science Alert. Human skin didn't always fear the sun. Not until a huge change 10,000 years ago. So something happened to cause certain groups to fear the sun, and they had to live in caves. This comes from the Smithsonian Magazine. It says, here's how Europeans quickly evolved lighter skin. It says darker skinned people lived in Europe until fairly recently. Let me say it again. Darker skinned people lived in Europe until fairly recently. It says for years researchers assumed that skin lightened as humans migrated from Africa and the Middle East into Europe about 40,000 years ago. So they said a sun lower in the sky and shorter day lengths would have favored skin that more easily synthesized vitamin D. But researchers are now learning that other factors must have been at play. This article from Ancient Origins says 10,000 years ago, Irish hunter-gatherers were dark-skinned. So something happened with the Japhetic line. My question is, why Japheth? So we're just establishing the fact that the original people were dark melanated people. We also have to remember there were albinos. But overall, melanated people were in those nations, which is why it's surprising that Esau moved into a territory that belonged to the Horites or Kori, and Strong's definition for Kori is white, as in white bread. It seems interesting that Esau would be able to move into that territory and fit right in, don't you think? Well, let's take another look at Esau. Now let's go back to see what happened when Jacob tricked Esau out of his blessing. And this comes from Genesis 27:11 through 17. And Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. But his mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go and get them for me. Now, he did this, but it seems like Rebecca is the one coaxing him into it. Yes, he could have refused, but obviously she's the mastermind here. Let's go on. It says, and he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the savory food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So we see that there are differences. As you can tell from the picture, the sheep is woolly compared to the straighter hair of the goat. So these two sons had different features. One came out red and hairy. If she had to take skins from the goats to put on him, that tells you that Jacob's hair wasn't like that. And some of us can identify even within our own families. You can have children with the same parents. One will come out light bright and the other one close to midnight. We need to take a look at the family tree to see what caused that. This comes from Genesis 28:1 through 5. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said to him, you shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. He's telling Jacob this, but this is the same thing they told Esau, only Esau didn't listen. He had been warned not to take a wife from these other nations, but he did it anyway. So it goes on to say, arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take yourself a wife from there of the daughters of Laban. Some say Laban, your mother's brother. And then he says, may Yah Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be an assembly of peoples, to give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your descendants with you. The blessing of Abraham to you, Jacob, and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the land in which you are a stranger, which Yah gave to Abraham. Now listen, so Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. He was Syrian. His name Laban or Laban. Let's see what his name means. Laban, white. Laban or Laban means white. So something obviously passed on to Esau through genetics, so that he came out red and hairy with hair like a goat instead of woolly haired like his brother Jacob. We certainly know that it can happen, and it doesn't always have to be albinism. In the case of Laban, it may be that he was an albino and it led to him being called white, or he was an exceptionally light, bright man. Hitchcock Bible Names Dictionary says Laban means white, shining, gentle, brittle. Whatever it was, something definitely passed on to Esau, and based on Esau's description, he had a few things in common with those he chose to join himself to. It would be hard to imagine him being an albino, though, or pale, because he's described as being an outdoorsman and a skillful hunter. And in that climate, it would be difficult. Now let's go back to Seir, the Horite, who inhabited the land before Esau got there. And this comes from Gill's exposition of Genesis 36:20. It says, these are the sons of Seir the Horite who inhabited the land before, as the Targum of Jonathan adds, that is, before it was inhabited by Esau and his posterity, and called Edom, and had from him the name of Seir. But the Horites dwelt here before him, even in Abraham's time. These people were there in Abraham's time. It says, and who were so called from their dwelling underground in holes and caves. They lived in holes and caves, with which the further part of the land of Edom abounded, and are the same the Greeks call troglodyte. Jarchai says, from their rabbins these were very expert in the nature of the land, and knew what was fit for olives and what for vines. Now the genealogy of this man is here given partly to show who were the ancient inhabitants of this land before they were drove out and seceded by Esau and his sons, and partly because of the intermarriages of Esau and his posterity with them, whereby they more easily came into the possession of the country. For Esau married the daughter of Anah, the son of Zibeon, a son of Seir, and Eliphaz took Timnah, a sister of Lotan, the son of Seir, to be his concubine. The names of the sons of Seir follow. So listen to the names. The first one listed, Lotan, and Shobal, and Zibeon, and Anah. Listen, the first of these is said to be the same with Latinus, a king that reigned in Italy. Are you seeing the connection here to the Italians? But not only that, Esau married into what we would call the upper class. Let's take a look at that. This comes from pulpit commentary regarding the descendants of Seir. It says the first question which arises is who Seir was. He is called in Genesis 36:20 Seir the Horite, and the only previous mention of the name Seir in that chapter is in verse 8. So it goes on to say that Seir, the name, belonged to the head of the tribe which had become located there, and was of course not in the line of Abraham. This tribe called Horites or Hori being the name of Seir's eldest grandson, or troglodytes, acquired their name from hollowing out, dwelling in the rocks, as at Petra. It goes on to say the sons of Seir are called in Genesis also dukes, a word answered to by the latter sheikhs, as in an Arab sheikh. A sheikh is an Arab leader, in particular the chief or head of an Arab tribe, family, or village. So it's saying they are called dukes of the Horites, or the dukes of Hori, among their dukes in the land of Seir. So we see that he had name recognition, and we're going to see how it benefited him when we look at his grandson Zepho. Zepho served as the captain in an army in Africa, and when he left there, he went to Chittim, and they welcomed him with open arms. He had name recognition. Let's go on. Now, of course, if you study the historical accounts about the origin of the founders of Rome, you'll run into a lot of dead ends. You'll see a lot of mythology mixed into it. They say they descended from the gods, and you know what? We may need to take that into consideration in light of Daniel's vision and what we've learned about the Horites. Where did they come from if they did not come from the sons of Noah? So we're seeing infiltration. At one time, the original people were there in Greece and Rome, and then these other groups just appeared and became those people. Where have we heard that before? So this comes from Britannica about Latinus. It says Latinus in Roman legend was king of the Aborigines in Latium and eponymous hero of the Latin race. The Greek poet Hesiod calls him the son of the Greek hero Odysseus and the enchantress Circe. The Roman poet Virgil makes him the son of the Roman god Faunus and the nymph Marica. Latinus was a shadowy personality who was perhaps invented to explain the origin of Rome and its relations with Latium. Why wouldn't they want people to know their origins? That's a good question, right? Now let's look at Zepho. He was Esau's grandson. Zepho was Lotan's nephew by marriage. Remember, we read earlier that Lotan was equated with a king that ruled in Italy. So this comes from the book of Jasher 61, and this is during the time when the Israelites were still in Egypt. It says, and it came to pass at that time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, commanded all his people to make for him a strong palace in Egypt. And he also commanded the sons of Jacob to assist the Egyptians in the building. And the Egyptians made a beautiful and elegant palace for a royal habitation. And he dwelt therein, and he renewed his government, and he reigned securely. And Zebulun, the son of Jacob, died in that year. That is the 72nd year of the going down of the Israelites to Egypt. And Zebulun died 114 years old, and was put into a coffin and given into the hands of his children. And in the 75th year died his brother Simeon. He was 120 years old at his death, and he was also put into a coffin and given into the hands of his children. And Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, captain of the host to Angeas, king of Dinhabah, was still daily enticing Angeas to prepare for battle, to fight with the sons of Jacob in Egypt. So Zepho is the captain of the hosts in Africa. He's trying to convince the African king Angeas to go and fight against the Egyptians. That was an excuse. He really wanted to go and fight against the Israelites. So listen, he was enticing Angeas to prepare for battle to fight with the sons of Jacob in Egypt. And Angeas was unwilling to do this thing, for his servants had related to him all the might of the sons of Jacob, what they had done unto them in their battle with the children of Esau. And Zepho was in those days daily enticing Angeas to fight with the sons of Jacob in those days. Now this is definitely Esau's seed. He carries that same hatred for the seed of Jacob that his grandfather had. So it says, and after some time, Angeas hearkened to the words of Zepho, and consented to him to fight with the sons of Jacob in Egypt. And Angeas got all his people in order, a people numerous as the sand which is upon the seashore, and he formed his resolution to go to Egypt to battle. And amongst the servants of Angeas was a youth 15 years old, Balaam. We know him, don't we? Balaam, the son of Beor, was his name. And the youth was very wise and understanding the art of witchcraft. And Angeas said unto Balaam, conjure for us, I pray thee, with the witchcraft, that we may know who will prevail in this battle, to which we are now proceeding. And Balaam ordered that they should bring him wax, and he made therefore the likeness of chariots and horsemen, representing the army of Angeas and the army of Egypt. And he put them in the cunningly prepared waters that he had for that purpose. And he took in his hand the boughs of myrtle trees, and he exercised his cunning, or his witchcraft. And he joined them over the water, and there appeared unto him the water in the resembling images of the hosts of Angeas, falling before the resembling images of the Egyptians and the sons of Jacob. And Balaam told this thing to Angeas, and Angeas despaired, and did not arm himself to go down to Egypt to battle, and he remained in his city. And when Zepho the son of Eliphaz saw that Angeas despaired of going forth to battle with the Egyptians, Zepho fled from Angeas from Africa, and he went and came unto Chittim. Listen, and all the people of Chittim received him with great honor, and they hired him to fight their battles all the days. And Zepho became exceedingly rich in those days. So he was a mercenary. And the troops of the king of Africa still spread themselves in those days. And the children of Chittim assembled and went to Mount Cuptizah, and on account of the troops of Angeas, king of Africa, who were advancing upon them. So now he's fighting for Chittim, and the king of Africa is coming against Chittim. So let's see what happens. It says, and the king commanded that they should bring of the soil of Chittim in large ships, and they also brought stones to build therewith, and the builders built palaces for Janiah the queen, and the queen became healed of her illness. And at the revolution of the year, the troops of Africa continued coming to the land of Chittim to plunder as usual. And Zepho, son of Eliphaz, heard their report, and he gave orders concerning them, and he fought with them. He fought with Chittim against the African army, and they fled before him. and he delivered the land of Chittim from them. Now remember, he used to be the captain of the host, so he definitely knew the playbook. Let's read. And the children of Chittim saw the valor of Zepho, and the children of Chittim resolved, and they made Zepho king over them. They made him king, and he became king over them. And whilst he reigned, they went to subdue the children of Tubal and all the surrounding islands. So now he's fighting for Chittim against the other children of Japheth. It says, and their king Zepho went at their head, and they made war with Tubal and the islands, and they subdued them. And when they returned from the battle, they renewed his government for him, and they built for him a very large palace for his royal habitation and seat. And they made a large throne for him, and Zepho reigned over the whole land of Chittim and over the land of Italia, Italy, 50 years. Now let's make some connections. This comes from World Population Review. It's asking the question, which country has had the most popes? It says, given that Italy is the home of Rome and the Vatican, it should come as no surprise that the overwhelming majority of popes have come from Italy. Listen, there have been a total of 266 popes during the life of the Catholic religion. 217 of them come from Italy. A distant second is France, which has had a total of 16 popes. These are the only two countries that have had more than 10 popes. Surely you know that's not a coincidence. Now, if you continue reading in Jasher, you will see that later on, after some time had passed, Chittim would go and fight against the Edomites on their home turf and beat them, and they would become one nation. This comes from Jasher chapter 90. At that time, in the 5th year after, listen, the children of Israel had passed over Jordan, after the children of Israel had rested from their war with the Canaanites, at that time great and severe battles arose between Edom and the children of Chittim. And the children of Chittim fought against Edom. And Abianus, king of Chittim, went forth in that year, that is in the 31st year of his reign, and a great force with him, and the mighty men of the children of Chittim. And he went to Seir to fight against the children of Esau. And Hadad the king of Edom heard of this report, and he went forth to meet him with a heavy people and strong force, and engaged in battle with him in the field of Edom. And the hand of Chittim prevailed over the children of Esau. And the children of Chittim slew of the children of Esau 22,000 men, and all the children of Esau fled from before them. And the children of Chittim pursued them, and they reached Hadad king of the Edom, who was running before them, and they caught him alive and brought him to Abianus king of Chittim. And Abianus ordered him to be slain. And Hadad king of Edom died in the 48th year of his reign. Listen, and the children of Chittim continued their pursuit of Edom, and they smote them with a great slaughter, and Edom became subject to the children of Chittim. And the children of Chittim ruled over Edom. And Edom became under the hand of the children of Chittim, and became one kingdom from that day. They became one kingdom from that day. And from that time they could no more lift up their heads, and their kingdom became one with the children of Chittim. Listen to this from Stanford Report. It says Stanford researchers lay out first genetic history of Rome. A new genetic history of the eternal city reveals a dynamic population shaped in part by political and historical events. Scholars have been studying Rome for hundreds of years, but it still holds some secrets. For instance, relatively little is known about the ancestral origins of the city's denizens. Why? Listen to this from Genesis 7:17 through 20. Now the flood was on the earth 40 days. The waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about on the surface of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth, and all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered, and all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds and cattle and beasts and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of the Spirit of life. Listen, all that was on the dry land died. What about things in the deep waters? What about creatures in the waters? Now, if you absolutely cannot believe that there are creatures living in the deep waters, then I won't force you to believe that. But I want you to consider this next scripture. This comes from Isaiah 27:1. In that day the Most High with his severe sword, great and strong, will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, that twisted serpent, and he will slay the reptile that is in the sea. Think about this. The flood took out everything that was on land, on dry land. Where did the mermaids come from? The mermen, where did they come from? Why is Daniel seeing a vision of things coming out of the sea? Hybrid beings. Let's take a look at this journal article from Evang Quarterly. And this was written by Associate Professor Charles Pfeiffer. And it's entitled Lotan and Leviathan. Now it says, to the ancient Semite, a god and the phenomenon which he represented were designated by one and the same word. Shemesh was either the sun god or the sun itself. The Hebrew word for sea is Yam or Yam, but the same word in Canaanite mythology represents a god who is associated with the sea. It goes on to say the fullest biblical description of Leviathan is given in Job 41, as in Psalm 104. The description here is of a living creature, probably the crocodile, familiar in the Nile and evidently known in Palestine in antiquity. It says Isaiah makes reference to Leviathan in a prophetic passage depicting the future victory of Yah over his foes. In that day, Yah with his hard and great and strong sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisting serpent, and he will slay the dragon. So we have Leviathan being depicted as a serpent, a fleeing serpent, a twisting serpent, and also a dragon that's in the sea. But listen, one of the tablets from Canaanite Ras Shamra describes Lotan in almost identical words. And it says, when thou hast smitten Lotan, the fleeing serpent, and hast put to an end the torturous serpent, the mighty one with 7 heads. So in this Ras Shamra text, it is Baal rather than Yah who is the foe of Lotan or Leviathan. Now, What's the connection here to the son of Seir? They normally would name their children or give the children names of their gods, like Baal and Bel. Same thing with us, where we have the name of Yah, or our people, our ancestors had Abba's name in their name. So the same thing is happening here with Lotan and Leviathan. Let's look at another source though. This article comes from Tyndale House and it's entitled, "What is the Leviathan?" It says many Christians are curious about the identity of the Leviathan, a creature referenced by name 6 times in the Old Testament. It says, what could this creature be? The etymology of the name provides a hint. Though there is some speculation on this, the name Leviathan most likely means writhing or twisting one, which naturally suggests a snake-like creature. The other hint comes from the Septuagint, a Greek version of the Old Testament from the 2nd century BC. It translates Leviathan in the second divine speech of Job with Dracon, which also denotes a serpentine creature and in English is dragon. Interestingly, the Septuagint translates the other instance of Leviathan in Job 3:8 with Ketos, a Greek-styled dragon that has a hog nose. The cumulative evidence certainly supports the idea that Leviathan is a sea dragon. Let's end with the interpretation Daniel received about the fourth empire. This comes from Daniel 2:40 through 43. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. Listen. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men. Who's they? Who's they? They will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. Are we only looking at this vision spiritually and not thinking that this prophecy was actually telling us that other worldly beings infiltrated the bloodline of some of the people in this empire? Are we really all humans, or are there hybrids living among us already? There's so much to cover with this series, and as I said, we need to look at all of this before we get to the deception of the Roman Catholic Church concerning Scripture. We need this foundation to help us understand what they did and why they did it. So we will pick up here next time. If this message has been a blessing to you, please hit the like, share it, and you're welcome to subscribe if you have not already done so. We upload on Sunday mornings, Yah willing, at 8:30 a.m. Join me next time.